Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome into a new edition of the FaceTurn podcast here on the Sports Insanity Network. Mike and Jeff with you. Jeff, how are you?
I'm doing excellent. How about yourself?
Doing well. We hope everyone had a very good 4th of July for your Independence Day. But I do have to say something for WWE to hold a pay per view or a PLE, whatever they call it, in Canada on July 4th week, that takes some guts, Triple H. That
Yep.
takes some guts. All right. So, Jeff and I tonight, we're going to cover Money in the Bank. We'll cover NXT Heatwave. We'll dive in a little bit on AEW as well. They've got some stuff going on that we want to discuss. We will also talk about the Who Killed WCW series on Vice. If you have not watched it, if you don't have Vice, you can find the episodes up on YouTube. It was excellent. We'll get into that at the very end. But like we said, we'll dive into Money in the Bank. But I want to start with this because we had seen the QR codes for weeks and what it led to. And a couple of weeks ago, we got what the QR codes meant. It was the return of Uncle Howdy, played by Bo Dallas, and his group of misfit friends. They are now known as the Wyatt Six, or the Wyatt Six. Sick. Jeff, I think you would like the return if you like a horror film.
Yeah.
Because that's how the return played out like. And the last 2 weeks, the Bo Dallas interviews with Uncle Howdy have been nothing short of excellent. Your thoughts here on the Uncle Howdy return?
Their first return, their debut, I loved. When Sister Abigail came out, and she kind of stood up, kind of creepy, kind of like a scene from the movie The Ring, and she just pointed to the back, and you go back there, and you just see absolute destruction and carnage. It was so dark and eerie and suspenseful and cinematic. There was blood coming from Chad Gable. I'm glad he's okay. And a few other guys. One guy looked like it was the back of his head looked like it was Private Piles after the bathroom scene in Full Metal Jacket. I just loved everything about it. The only thing that would have been really cool, and I heard somebody else say this, and I said, "Oh, I didn't think about that." Instead of Bo or Uncle Howdy / Bo Dallas saying "We're here," you could have had Bray Wyatt's image pop up on the screen and say the same thing, like speaking from beyond the grave type of deal. But either way, that's just a very minute nitpick. And then when she brought out the VHS tape, and this is where I felt really old when Michael Cole felt the need to explain what a VHS tape was.
Yes.
I was like, oh, come on. The how they shot it and how it was portrayed, I absolutely loved. Mm-hmm. I mean, by the second video, you kind of understood that he's more or less talking to himself in a split personality type of thing. That's how I read it. And at the very end of this last one, where you kind of mesh back and forth between the two, I thought that was amazing. So anybody who doesn't like it, and there are people that don't like it because I go down deep, dark rabbit holes on Twitter all the time on various topics, wrestling, of course, being one of them. And some people didn't care for it. I don't know what to tell them. I don't know what else they could want. I mean, if Vince was there, my God, Voldemort would have had, God knows what he would have done to them if they even would have been brought back. There's some people that just don't like it just because they just want to see 5-star matches that go on for 30 minutes each night. Which, hey, if that's your thing, that's your thing. But if you looked at it as a WWE fan and you weren't impressed, I don't know that you can be impressed by anything.
Yeah, that's the thing, because I thought this was I thought the return, the scene with Sister Abigail and she points to the back and all that carnage, like it's straight out of a horror film. The
Yeah.
lights are flickering. And I was really thinking like they don't stop at the entrance, or maybe they get into the ring and say it. But it was kind of like, okay, all right. And I was so there for it because it still gives me the creeps when I watched the video on YouTube. And I've watched it half a dozen times
Oh
because it
yes.
gets me every single time. I'm looking for something different. I can't find it. I'm with you on the age factor when it comes to the VHS tape. I'm with you on that.
Eh.
And kind of feels like Chad Gable's become the first victim of their presence just because of what happened when they re-debuted. The lights are flickering whenever he's in the ring. And I'm just thinking to myself, what if they screwed Money in the Bank so well and they just had Uncle Howdy scare everybody and he's the one with the briefcase at the end? I'm like, that's the creepiest guy to have the briefcase because you never know what's going to happen. But no,
I could picture them showing up at Money in the Bank while he was, especially if he's just fingertips away from it and you
the
see the lights
lights
go
go
out,
out. Oh my!
and all you need is one of them, even Sister Abigail, to show up.
So
Um,
lights go, kind of like the Undertaker. The lights go out and he just appears at the top of the ladder.
that would be so sick.
Oh
And thank God it will be on a PLE where the stupid censors are not going to bleep out the chants.
yeah, USA. We got to talk about.
Yeah,
It
that's
ruins
another
the
point.
moment.
It does, because like they said on another show, that they'll do that. They'll censor that, followed by the next show. You have every other word, minus the F word.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
I think that's just them getting some type of revenge on the WWE for leaving at the end of the year. But that's another discussion.
you know what? You could be right, but I think it's fun to see um, Uncle Howdy and company back.
Mm-hmm.
But it also gives spots to people who aren't doing anything. If you've read who's in
Mm-hmm.
the group, Joe Gacy from NXT, Dexter Loomis, who we hadn't seen in a while, Nikki Cross is involved, you know. So it's cool in that way. And then there's the rumor of who the sixth person is. Is it Alexa Bliss when she returns? Or is it the presence of Bray Wyatt, which
I think
I
that's what it's
think
going to
that's
be.
got to be it.
Because I think by the way they spelled six, it's not SIX, it's SICKS.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah. So we'll see if they run any reign of terror across the WWE at Money in the Bank tomorrow. Um, let's just dive into Money in the Bank, then we'll get on with the rest of what we've got. So
yes.
it's a 5-match PLE in Toronto. The WWE did announce today Trish Stratus will be the host of Money in the Bank,
Yeah.
which I
Makes
mean,
sense.
I couldn't think of a better person to host anything than Trish Stratus.
No, nope. And being that she's a Torontonian.
By the way, just so I can rub this in, she's won more than the Maple Leafs.
She what?
She's won more than the Maple Leafs.
Yes, she has.
There we go. There's my little dig at Toronto. All right. I'm gonna push the Money in the Banks to the side, and we'll end it with those two.
Okay.
So let's start with the big 6-man tag. It'll be Cody Rhodes teaming with Randy Orton and Kevin Owens, taking on the New Bloodline. and I think it's Solo, Tamatonga, and Tongalo. I don't think they're putting Fatu in this match. Although I could be wrong. If they say something on SmackDown, you can definitely correct it. All right. Two-parter here, Jeff. What have you made of the new bloodline led by Solo? And how do you think this match plays out?
Um, I I really do enjoy it because I've been a fan of of uh, Tonga Loa and Tel. I always get their names mixed up. I'm terrible with names sometimes. But when
Toma Tonga
Gorilla's a
and
Destiny,
Tongaloa.
as Gorilla's a Destiny, uh, I really thought they were awesome in New Japan. Jacob Fatu, for those who never saw him in MLW, he's a specimen.
Oh my god.
He's a beast.
That moonsault he nails.
Oh God, he's ridiculous. And so I enjoy it. I want to see how far down they go the road with this before Roman eventually comes back. Will or will it kind of almost implode on them on Solo at some point where they're so far wild and out of control that even Solo can't take control of them. I mean, so many different things are going to happen, but I kind of wonder who's going to. They always have names already. Who's going to be on Team Roman of sorts when he comes back? But I could see when he comes back, you figure it's going to be probably Jimmy Uso. Maybe by that time, Jay Uso, if he has nothing going on, maybe he goes back over to help them out. And then they have Hikuleu coming in. I don't know where he's going to align himself. Is he going to be with Roman, or is he going to go with the new bloodline? Whenever I mean, he could
Trademark
pay
the
a
name Tonga.
yeah, and that was I think that was originally from what I read that was originally going to be for Jacob Fatu.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wish they wouldn't do that. I assume by now they're not going to do that with Jacob unless
No.
there's a storyline behind him doing it. I have no idea. But even I guess they could get away with it with Hikuleu changing his name because he's not like a household name. Although the diehard fans are already going to know who he is from his time in TNA, in AEW, and in New Japan. So yeah, we'll see what they do with that. So I'm really excited. I don't know if you noticed this when Jacob debuted, and did you take a look at the God look at each other, kind of like, oh no, we got like, is this a good idea type of deal? That little look
Yeah,
that
he's
they
going to
kind
be
of
the
shot.
loose cannon kind of guy.
Yeah.
And by the way, them taking out Paul Heyman last week.
That was nasty. And the fact that they got Paul Heyman up and on and through the table was great.
By the way, shout out Paul Heyman just for agreeing to do that.
Yeah, and his eyes were all red and bloodshot before. It looked like he was crying beforehand. So, I can never say enough good things about Paul Heyman. I love Paul Heyman so much.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Um,
And then as far as the outcome, I think it's going to be the God and Solo together in that for their 3-man team, and Jacob's going to be off on the side, if at all, until like later in the match, where he might come out of nowhere. I don't see Rhodes and Owens and Randy Orton winning. How they're going to lose, I don't know. I think it'll just be a numbers game type of thing. At some point, that's how ref distraction type of deal.
Yeah, Solo's gonna, in my opinion, Solo's gonna get the pin. I don't know who he pins, but it's gonna set up for Solo Cody SummerSlam, and I think that's when Roman returns, or maybe returns before that. But I think that's when you get the Roman return, and then the build for Bloodline War Games is on, and it should be fun to see. But and you can keep going with this because Cody's going to need an opponent for SummerSlam because of what happened King of the Ring. And you can keep going with Orton and Owens against God for a little bit. And I think you're right in the sense of what happens when Roman comes back, because you're gonna have Roman, you're gonna have Jimmy, you'll see Jay, I think, join back with him, and then the the Hickolo versus Jay Gafatu story is gonna be interesting too.
Yeah, because like, where's he gonna go?
Yeah, it's a tug of war who wins. So, all right. For the Intercontinental Championship, Sami Zayn defends against Braun Breaker, who's been on a absolute tear since he got called up from NXT. I'm going to go Braun just because of how seamless the transition's been. And quite frankly, Braun might get himself disqualified or something. Sammy retains, and you keep the feud going. So, I mean, but I expect Braun to put on a show. So, I've talked myself into I'm going to take Sami Zayn.
I could see Sammy winning or surviving. It's the best way.
That's the better term.
The title, and putting it on Braun at SummerSlam. Kind of waiting until then. Because SummerSlam is what? August, correct? Yeah.
As your next PLE after this.
Yeah, so you could have him get the championship there, where Braun's like, I had you beat, and they say, you did have him beat on like Nick Aldis or
Adam Pearce.
Adam Pearce could say, no, you did have him beat, but your anger, your aggression, your unwillingness to listen to the referee caused you to be disqualified.
Yeah.
But if they want to get him over as an uber heel, then of course he does win in Toronto or something like that. But even though Sammy's more of a Montreal guy, but still,
Canada is Canada.
Yep.
Just ask Shawn Michaels.
That's right. From one end to the other, he's a despised man still there.
He will continue to be. Sorry,
so
Sean.
I do think I could see Sammy winning, somehow retaining the title, and Braun then taking it off of him in even a worse mood come SummerSlam. That would be my guess.
Yeah. That's gonna be something. All right. World Heavyweight Championship, Seth freaking Rollins versus Damian Priest. Stipulations are this: if Priest wins, Rollins cannot get another shot as long as Priest is champion. And if Seth Rollins wins, Damian Priest is no longer a part of the Judgment Day. All right, Jeff, where are you leaning on this one?
Okay, so this one is I could see Damian Priest retaining here, which will then lead to him leaving the Judgment Day eventually anyway, where he could win and say, see, I didn't need them here to keep this championship. And then eventually, when he does lose the championship, Seth Rollins will take it off of whoever's next. But I think it's too early to have Damian Priest lose the championship. So that I'm going to go with Priest. That's going to retain.
The thing for me is, and I think there are so many layers, and they played this out on Raw, tension between Balor and Priest. tensions with Priest and kind of everyone around based on
Mhm.
the whole Liv Morgan angle.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I don't think anybody realized how quickly Seth Rollins was going to come back to television
Yeah.
because we had not seen him since WrestleMania. I think either way, whoever wins, I think you're just holding that title for another month when Gunther beats whoever's the champion anyway. I think this is the last stand for Priest in Judgment Day. I think Liv Morgan plays a huge factor in this match, and I think Seth Rollins wins, which will lead to the eventual return of Rhea Ripley, and then Ripley and Priest can go not on their own, but they'll be together against the Judgment Day, and they'll try to have to build up their own.
Yeah.
You
Like a
know,
2 Judgment Day type of faction of sorts.
just a group to battle off the Judgment Day.
Yeah.
Because she'll take Liv, and Priest has whatever whoever they want to put him with. Maybe they can get R-Truth to do because he agrees to just about
Yeah.
anything. He still has not been fired by the Judgment Day, so who knows? All right. Then we have the 2 Money in the Bank matches. Let's start with the women's. Io Sky against Chelsea Green against Lyra Valkyria versus Tiffany Stratton versus Naomi versus Zoe Stark. All right, Jeff, I will let you go first here.
I really think it's going to be Naomi.
Oh, okay.
Because they're really playing up her friendship with Bayley right now. And I think you could see her win Money in the Bank, and then go on to face and probably beat Bayley at some point down the road. Now, if it was just now on the flip side, I could also see Tiffany Stratton, because that girl's got everything. And if you're going to put a rocket on somebody and due to a young female what you're going to be doing to Braun Breaker, Tiffany's the one.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't see like Bianca winning it, because she's already involved with Jade Cargill, and why break kind of more or less, even though they lost the championships, at least they still
they're going to
still have a reason
regain
to be
those
together.
tag titles at some point, you would think.
You would hope so, yeah. Because eventually they're going to. How they haven't gotten a rematch yet, I still don't know. But they could say, okay, she lost in the ladder match. Okay, now let's focus on getting our tag championships back. So I think it's. I could see Naomi winning. I'll go with. Yeah, I'm going to go with Naomi.
Okay. I'm very torn on actually, I'm torn on 3.
Okay.
Stratton, I'm torn on for what you said. You could strap the rocket to her with everything she's done. Chelsea Green is a very interesting case as well because it still fits the character.
I would love to see Chelsea Green win. If I had to pick somebody I wanted to win, I love Chelsea Green. She's actually a good wrestler if they give her the opportunity. But she's so funny. She really gets into that character, and that's what I
really does.
I love.
And the third one for me is Lyra Valkyria, because very similar to Stratton, since she's come up, they've given her this massive push and given her these great showings.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, okay, that's an intriguing option. I don't think Io wins because Io just had the title.
Yeah.
I don't think Zoe Stark wins because that was kind of your curveball in on Monday. Naomi's the ultimate wild card. And I hate saying this because it is, I think it's true. Naomi's kind of become the female Kofi Kingston, where we're
Yeah,
putting her in these matches, and the one she eventually wins, people are gonna pop.
yeah.
You know, I, I'm gonna I'm gonna go Stratton.
Okay.
I think that's the slam dunk. So I'm gonna go Tiffany Stratton.
Okay.
Then men's Money in the Bank. Jey Uso, Carmelo Hayes, Andrade, Chad Gable, LA Knight, and Drew McIntyre. All right. I think there's a lot of interesting underlying storylines here. With McIntyre, you have the potential of a CM Punk appearance after what happened a couple of weeks ago. With LA Knight, you have the Logan Paul factor. Gable, we mentioned earlier, the Wyatt Six. And with Jey Uso, you have the bloodline. Because any kind of representation of the old bloodline, I think Solo's going to be willing to take out.
Mhm.
So that kind of leaves you with Carmelo Hayes and Andrade. I'm going to go with Mello. They have given him the ball in big matches, and he's proven himself to be able to compete in those big matches. And he does not have to cash in right away. As long as he has the briefcase. Oh, by the way, there's another underlying factor. What if Carmelo Hayes cashed in on his old buddy Trick Williams and you reignite that feud on NXT?
Yep.
So there are options there. I'm going to go Carmelo Hayes because Mello is him.
He is him. I'm gonna say I think I'm gonna go, and I'd be really happy with this. I think it's gonna be LA Knight
Oh,
because who was it? Was it? I think it was Hulk Hogan who recently said that there's a guy right there that you got everything with in a superstar with LA Knight. He had a couple of people that he related him and Braun. He was a big fan of. But you figure that Chad Gable's this could be like a whole big to do with run-ins because you figure Chad
yeah.
Gable he's going to get taken out by the Wyatts at some point. I think it's going to be either when he's just getting to the ring and he never actually makes it into the match and they take him out, or he's at the top of the ladder, the lights go out, and there's one of the Wyatts that gets in, rushes up to the top, and meets him there and takes him out. I think with uh, Drew McIntyre, I think CM Punk is going to return and do the same type of thing where he's getting ready to either get on to the very top of the rung or he's starting to climb up and you hear it in living color start to play, something like that. Andrade, I can't take away his in-ring ability, but he connected with the fans yet? I don't know what it is. Um, some people will say, maybe it's his ability to speak and get over, but we've seen people not speak and even more broke. I hate saying the words broken English, but that's the only way I can describe it
Mm.
than him or at the same level, and they're still uber over. But it's just something about him that I don't think is really connecting with the fans. I think they enjoy his matches, but I don't like. I wouldn't. There's no way I'd put a championship, maybe like a mid level, like the IC or something like that on him. But I don't think they would put it on him for that reason that he's not there yet. I mean, I guess you can have him win it and then I mean, usually they have a whole year to cash it in, so you could spend a whole year building them up, type of deal. Let's So yeah, I think
And
I
that's what the briefcase was meant to do. It's meant to
yeah.
build people up. Not
Yeah, if you
just,
want to if you want to somehow build him up and get him where you think he could be a legit contender, not only a legit contender for the championship, because once he's in that ring, then like if he were to go against Seth Rollins, or Damian Priest, I think that would be a phenomenal
oh,
match.
fantastic.
But I don't know if the fans would have that overwhelming, like, wow, we're going to get to possibly see this. So if LA Knight, he still has the fans, even though I'm surprised he still does because he was kind of in that lull for a bit after his initial big run. But he still has the fans, so I think the fans would be behind him, especially if he took on. Um, uh, I don't know if it would be a heel Damian Priest by that time, or just because they, heaven forbid, they have two faces facing each other, or two heels facing each other for the most part. So I'm going to go with LA Knight for the win. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So LA Knight, Carmelo Hayes. It, what I love about this particular one is any of the six make compelling cases
Mm-hmm.
for it, but there's the underlying storylines. We've mentioned Punk and McIntyre, um, the Wyatt Six and Chad Gable. I mentioned Jay in the Bloodline. Like, depending on when they do that 6-man tag in coercion with the Money in the Bank match, like if Solo and company have time to recover a little bit, they can totally screw it over. Or that's where Jacob Fatu appears instead of with the 6-man tag.
Yeah.
He screws Jey Uso. So that should be fun. But it should be a fun paper. All right.
Oh yeah.
The next night we have NXT Heat Wave. Most NXT takeovers are fantastic. So run through
Yeah.
this very quickly. We got a tag team match with Carmen Petrovic and Ariana Grace taking on JC Jane and Jasmine Nix. I'm going to go with Jane and Nix because they've been together, and it's actually a fun underlying team.
I,
Also, I
I
love the
ooh,
mask that JC Jane wears now.
yeah, she got that from
The
Cody,
old
correct?
Cody Rhodes mask.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, I could see them winning because they're gonna probably. I hate this, but it's uh Grace. What was her
Ariana
name?
Grace.
Ariana Grace always seems to be on the cusp and then the losing end of everything, kind of like the Brooklyn Brawler of NXT.
The Brooklyn Brawler of NXT.
And I love Ariana Grace. I mean, she's got like a lot of things you could want that certain wrestlers slash superstars don't have. She has really good comedic timing, just like Chelsea Green. So when they need
She's
her,
the
but she
Chelsea
gets that
Green
from her
of
dad. I think she
NXT.
gets that from her dad. So
She's Santino's daughter, correct?
yeah,
Okay.
yep.
For the NXT Tag Team Championships, Nathan Frazier and Axiom defend against Chase U, Andre Chase, and Duke Hudson. Chase U. I'm for Chase U. Axiom and Nathan Frazier. There's been a lot of tension recently with Frazier going for the Heritage Cup and the Speed Championship. So Chase U cashes in. We got new tag team champions.
I I want to say Chase U, but I think what's going to happen is they're going to be given the chance to win the championships uh, by crook, and they're not going to take it because they admonished Ridge
Mm-hmm.
Holland about helping them win by cheating. So I think they're going to say, we're going to put up a better example, and then they end up losing because of that, and maybe they start using some more dastardly deeds in the future to maybe win the tag team championship. But on the other hand, there is that friction between Frazier and Axiom where maybe that comes to a boil. But I think they may wait off on that for a little bit. So yeah, I think you're going to see Axiom and Nathan Frazier retain.
All right. For the NXT Women's North American Championship, Kaylani Jordan defends against Sol Ruka, who has the greatest finishing move of all time.
Oh, that move is sick.
It is. Oh my God. Jeff, who do you like?
I like both of them. Oh, you mean I love both women, but honestly, I gotta stay with Kalani.
Yeah,
gotta stay with her.
Yeah, she just won the title, so it makes sense. Keep it up.
Yeah.
Should be a fun match, though.
Oh yeah, definitely.
All right, for the men's North American title, Obafemi defends against Wes Lee. If Obafemi wins, Wesley can no longer challenge as long as Femi is the champion. I'm going to go ANU and I'm going to go Wesley because Obafemi needs to get into the world title picture as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Also, Obafemi is what the main roster wants Omos to be. He is just a monster.
He just like Braun Breaker, Obafemi, who I wasn't initially impressed with, has really, I don't know what he's done. He's caught my eye. I know you're going to get in a match where he's going to kick somebody's head in. He's going to be destruction personified. I don't know what I would do in their position. Who do I think is going to win? If you have Wesley win, how are they going to have him win without making Obafemi look weak?
There has to be outside interference.
Either outside interference or maybe he decides to do something ridiculous that he normally wouldn't do. And maybe he bangs his head on that post outside of the turnbuckle, and that kind of knocks him out type of deal. And Wesley's able to pick up a win that way. Maybe Wesley cheats to win. That's the only way I could see it realistically happening. But yeah, he's got to get in that title picture as soon as humanly possible. He's going to be I think by the next draft, I think you could see him up on the main roster.
I want him in the Royal Rumble match.
Oh, that would be great.
I want Obafemi in the Royal Rumble match. And here was what I've been thinking, because we have the TNA NXT merger. Wes Lee was in TNA as a member of the Rascals.
Yeah.
What if you have the Rascals come out and the Rascals help Wes Lee?
That would be super cool.
Yeah,
that would be super cool.
Some things online about it. I'm like, you know what? Why not? All right. For the NXT women's title, Roxanne Perez defends against Lola Vice. Have you watched the promo between these two on Tuesday night?
Oh, that was difficult to watch. That was I guess as they say in the South, oh, bless their hearts. I love Roxanne Perez. She is, if I was going to make a list of the top, say, and put in definitely in the top 5, but if you definitely had a top 10 young, up and coming female wrestlers that you would want to build a promotion behind, Roxanne would be in that top 5 right now. As for such a young person, to show so much wherewithal. And maybe we have to give Booker T the credit for this, maybe, because she went to his school. But Lola, oh, love Lola Bice. Something about her I really like and enjoy. Except when she pulls that hair back in those tight little MMA braids, I can't take that. I gotta say it's got to be Roxanne Perez.
I'm torn because we saw so much passion from Lola.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also ready for Roxanne to get moved up as well, but wait and see on that. Yeah, I think Roxanne probably finds a way to. I don't want. Does a heel thing to win. Use the ropes, cheat somehow. Roxanne retains.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Then fatal four-way for the NXT Championship. Trick Williams defends against Javon Evans, Ethan Page, and Sean Spears, better known as two NXT guys against two former AEW guys. All right, Jeff, who do you like in the four-way or fatal four-way?
I think we're gonna whoop that Trick. I think it's got to be Trick Williams.
Wow. Okay.
I because I would assume that the young kid, what's his name again?
Javon Evans.
Javon Evans. The kid's talented. I will give him that. But to me, he's too new to put the championship on him. And then with Ethan Page and why am I drawing a blank?
Spears.
And Sean Spears, I think that might become something where they could feud, or they'll both complain they never got the fair opportunity because it was a fatal four-way. Because they didn't get pinned, so it's like, how is that fair type of deal? And I think that'll go that way. So that's why I think it's gonna be Trick. Eventually, when he loses the title, I would assume it's gonna. I think it's probably going to be Ethan Page eventually, but not right now. I think Trick is still, and I love Trick Williams as the champion. I really do. So, I at this point I kind of hope that it's him.
Yeah, I don't think Sean Spears needs a title. Javon Evans just came in, and he's done well. I think this is the perfect match to actually protect Trick Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Because he doesn't have to get pinned or submit to lose the title. So he can hit that knee.
Yeah.
And when he goes for the pin, someone goes, out. I'm going to take the 1, 2, 3. And I think that person's Ethan Page. But there is a caveat here.
Yeah.
Because the last couple of weeks, Gallus has returned and they've run roughshod.
Mm-hmm.
Who do they go after? Do they come in during this match and say, no, the title is going to go to Joe Coffey? Or do they make their statement early in the night? I'm going to go Ethan Page just for the fact of, one, it's different, but two, you could continue with an Ethan Page Trick Williams feud if Trick's not the one who gets pinned.
Yeah. And then if you do that, how long until Trick gets his championship back? Would you do it like the next pay-per-view, or wait till maybe
Halloween Havoc?
Yeah, Halloween Havoc, or even longer. I guess it all depends on how they want to play this out.
Here's the other thing about Trick. Because like Obafemi, I want Trick in the Rumble. Because I want that Trick Carmelo Hayes stare down to go down.
Oh, yeah, that Rumble has to happen. And especially if, I mean, heaven forbid he's still the champion, then he could walk in wearing the NXT championship and be the first one to eliminate Carmelo Hayes.
That's another point. Like if Hayes wins, Carmelo Hayes could cash in during the match and just get the pin to reclaim the title.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's another factor in this. So we'll wait and see. It should be a great weekend of professional wrestling, as they say. All right, but that's the WWE side. I do want to shift a little bit of gear. We'll get into AEW. We're also going to talk at the end about that WCW doc. But I just want to go on a couple of things on AEW because a couple of things that have caught my eye recently that I do want to discuss. One is the return of the DMD, Britt Baker. She came back at Forbidden Door last week. Cut a tremendous promo on Dynamite, explaining why she missed so much time. And the way it was very scary. She had mini strokes and very scary. So all the best to her. But she's back. Immediately going after Mercedes Moné, formerly known as Sasha Banks. Should be fun stuff. That feud should be good. But the thing I want to go into, and we'll get into the other portions of this, and I was talking about this with my sister, who's also a big wrestling fan, because the Owen Hart tournament's going on. We saw some matches take place Wednesday on Dynamite. Willow Nightingale beat Chris Statlander in the second round, and Jeff Jarrett lost in the first round to a wild card, which turned out to be Hangman Adam Page. And I don't know, Jeff, if you had saw the Jeff Jarrett promo about winning the Owen Hart. So to me, I'm not saying Jeff Jarrett had to win this tournament. I'm not saying that at all. Jeff Jarrett doesn't need a title shot. He doesn't need a title. But you can't have him cut that promo and then immediately lose. Because now, all of a sudden, Jeff Jarrett, of all people, has all the support behind him.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're cutting it away from him. And this is where my issue with this company is starting to get to. Because it feels like, to me, Tony Khan isn't willing to take a risk or a shot. He knows who he can rely upon. And those are the people he's going to continually give opportunities to. And I kind of think that that's where your popularity will kind of die out when you keep going. Same guy over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So
I more or less feel the same way, that it's almost like being the owner of a bar and not having any bar managerial experience. And he has a good eye. Whoever decides to bring in the talent, if it's him or a few other people, they got that good eye. But they had something that could have been very special with Jeff Jarrett, winning even an emotional thing where if he didn't win, but he lost in the finals, he could have lost in the finals to Hangman Page. And I think it would have been a little bit better off, because you would have had this large emotional buildup for a few weeks or so with Jeff Jarrett. And I think that's where that would have been a better payoff if they wanted Jeff to not win the championship, because they're playing off the real life scenario that he was great friends with Owen Hart. So I don't get that. Yeah, there's certain things that'll bother me that he does, that I don't know if it's him or I would hope it's him, because as the owner and boss, he should have the final say. But there's certain wrestlers on there, I'm like, I don't know what they're doing with or why they're doing this. The only one that can't be on that list is at the moment is Powerhouse Hobbs because he's injured. Like Brian Cage is one of them. The Murder Hawk is another one. Like
What
I
happened
don't
to
know what.
Wardlow?
Yeah, what happened to Wardlow? Like I'm hoping he's. I don't want him to be injured, but I'm hoping he's injured to explain why he just kind of like disappeared.
And then you do these things where Double or Nothing. Adam Cole comes out, cuts a promo that leads to the return of MJF. MJF low blows Adam Cole. Okay, we're done with that. No, because there's a whole story behind why Cole and
Yeah.
MJF broke up. Like, no, push Cole to the side. We don't know when he's coming back, but we still have that feud in our back pocket. And just, there's so much there. At the beginning, it was great, and it's still a great show because the
Oh
matches
yeah.
are fantastic. But the curveballs at times would be nice. Excuse me. There's going to be a point in time where Bryan Danielson's not around. Jon Moxley's not around. I'm happy you kept the title on Swerve and just didn't hand it over to Will Ospreay, but
Oh, me too.
you know,
I would have been very disappointed.
but does the world really want to see Swerve Hangman again? I mean, this tournament could have been Jeff Jarrett. I don't want to say his sponsor, but this could have been the cherry on top of his great career.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have to have it, but he made you want to believe in him. And as fans, that's kind of the thing we want. And the same could be said about the women's division. Now, look, I think the winner of the women's side of the Owen Hart tournament's easy. I think it's going to be Mariah May because then you get the Mariah May, Tony Storm, storyline right there, back pocket.
Yeah.
But if you had Chris Statlander beat Willow Nightingale, it's kind of like, okay, Statlander's former champ, and we can get that going. But again, I'm going to digress. We'll wait to see what happens. But those were just a couple of the little things I wanted to talk about when it comes to AEW. All right. Last thing, because we've been going on for a bit. The Vice documentary of Who Killed WCW. 4 parts. It was phenomenal stuff. Jeff, I know you didn't see the last episode, but just your overall take of the program, because as someone who was very young when WCW was bought by Vince McMahon, it was very telling, this documentary.
Yeah.
Or series, whatever you want to call
it. I thought it was really well done. I'm sure I know there were other wrestlers that were not in the documentary for whatever reason. I'm not sure why they didn't have, say, Sting in there. And a few others. But it was great to watch because it brought back so many memories. Because I remember I watched WCW even before Hogan even came. I still remember. I took a little break for a while from watching wrestling, but I do remember, watching a pre WCW of sorts in the late '80s, very early '90s, like very early 1990. But it brought back so many great memories and some frustrating memories of there was, unfortunately, you can't pin it on one specific thing, on what killed WCW. Ultimately, looking out, you could say, okay, maybe it was Ted Turner who killed it by allowing that merger of with Time Warner. Because after that merger happened, it's almost like a direct correlation to the company not really caring about WCW. And there were many guys there that were just along for the guaranteed contract, the uh, the Hogan contract that I was probably one of the worst decisions, but they probably had to give him that, his creative control, in order to get him on the roster. Like if you're TNA right now, or your AEW, and Roman Reigns right now becomes available to you, but only with that caveat, he has creative control, they would take it in a heartbeat. I mean, that was Hulk Hogan, the biggest wrestler in the world, and still to this day one of the biggest names in all of professional wrestling ever. I think there was I think it was a slow burn at times for me watching it. Like when they broke up the NWO and put it into two factions, I think that was a little thing. The who's in charge this week type of thing. When they decided to, for whatever reason, put David Flair in matches, that was a little piece of broken, a nick in the wall of sorts. They had stupid storylines with Ric Flair going into a mental hospital and just wooing all over the mental hospital. That,
By the way, he's doing that in real life now.
Oh, I'm sure he is. He's doing it in restaurants all over the Eastern Seaboard.
You know who I am? Woo!
And it seemed like the lack of direction. Like they had all this great talent there. They had the big veterans who, I can't say if they overstayed their welcome as far as, but they had the young talent after, like, say, Benoit and Guerrero and Perry Saturn and all those guys left, and Dean Malenko left, and Jericho leaves, and the Big Show eventually leaves. You have all those guys leaving, but you still have this really great group of young talent that could put on a great match, but weren't as over as they needed to be. But they probably could have been if given the opportunity. Now, whether that was Hogan nixing a few things, and I remember reading online that he nixed something with Billy Kidman back in the day, and I think something with Jericho at one point. Was Billy Kidman on Hulk Hogan's level as far as star power? Not a chance in the world, but you never know. He could have helped make Billy Kidman an uber star by putting him over, or doing something. I think him not doing something with Jericho was a ridiculous idea, or a ridiculous decision not to do it. But it worked out well for Jericho. He's still one of the greatest of all time. Like when they showed the finger poke of doom, I remember watching that pay-per-view, and I'm like, what is going on? The whole thing with I think they were right with the whole Vince Russo thing, where he said, you know what, if they're incapable of doing certain things, so I'm just going to go out and do it myself. They did say in an interview that Russo was like a mad genius at times backstage for the WWF at the time, but they always had Vince McMahon kind of reeling him in a bit, and they didn't have that with him there in WCW. The one thing that was kind of sad especially near the very end, is they were just starting to do certain things right in the first part of the show, and when they would really showcase the smaller talent, the luchas, and just the smaller American wrestlers. They had a really good group of guys. They had like, I remember one of my favorites back then, and he just kind of dropped off the face of the earth, was Lash LaRue. I enjoyed him. And there was a whole bunch of other young guys. I think his name was Kid Romeo. And they were just doing those high flying, pretty much everything AEW does now with their high flyers, but doing it, just concentrating in the first like 30 or so minutes of the show. and they're just a whole bunch of little tiny things that just did like Goldberg losing with his with the cattle prodder, the streak losing with that. I remember watching that pay-per-view, and I'm like, they hit him with a cattle prodder. I'm like, he like, didn't the Tank just run him over 2 weeks earlier and he survived it or something? You couldn't kill Goldberg at that time. And I'll be honest with you, Goldberg didn't frame himself as the nicest dude in the world.
No.
He came across as it's a business that I care more about the money business aspect of it than anything else. Yeah, I that's just how he came. I mean, maybe it's just how they filmed it and how it came across, and they didn't intentionally, but that's how it came across to me. Them not knowing how to handle Bret Hart, and then his unfortunate demise because of that errant kick, and him joining everybody joined the NWO by the end of the show, and that I absolutely hated. They should have always kept the NWO to just Hall, Nash, and Hogan, and maybe two other guys at one point, and then let them kind of drift off, not into obscurity at first, but kind of like
take a
back seat and let a new group of younger talent, because you can't be the New World Order when you're in your late 40s, unless it's like one guy in his 40s who's like, say, the mouthpiece of the group. And Nash for the most part has always held my attention when he was on that mic, when he was talking. I knew where he was kind of going, unlike Scott Steiner, who I loved, but you didn't know where he was going to go from 1 minute to the next. Was he going to give you a math lesson or anything?
Math.
But there were so many like weird little things, and it got to the point where I was at one point watching both Raw and Nitro at the same time on two different TVs in adjoining rooms. To now, I'm just going to tape WCW because it lost some of its luster of sorts. So, yeah, that was kind of sad. And the fact, when you look at the roster when they closed down, I wish Bischoff could have bought them out. And some of those older guys, I don't know, just that was one of the things. I think it was some older guys that should have not have been prominent anymore. Just my opinion on it. But how do you tell guys like Hogan, Nash, Hall, and a few others that, you know what, not that your time is done, but it's time to kind of back off and let's see if we can make some new stars. And they're not making new stars. And here comes the WWE. We're making Triple H. We're making Austin. We're making, all these other guys that are coming up.
I think you just said the key was they couldn't develop those stars. And every signature moment in WCW history, there was a caveat because Hogan nixed it or this happened. And it's kind of like you gave these guys too much control and power. Now, like you said, that probably had to be part of the reason why they got lured in to the company. Yeah. But at some point, it had to feel different for the people in that room, because you bring up, well, who did they develop? Well, the biggest name they developed, probably the two biggest ones, are Goldberg and DDP.
Yeah.
And if you want to throw Sting into there, just the character change, because he was, NWA anyway. But outside of that, it wasn't development. Nitro, you'd have 3 or 4 Hogan segments on a show.
Yeah.
So it took up time. But I just think there became too many massive egos, and they all couldn't get on the same page. Like you bring in Russo. Well, who's in charge? Is Russo in charge or is Bischoff in charge?
Yeah.
Well, they're not listening to Russo at all. And Goldberg even says how much he hates Vince Russo. And then
Yeah.
Bret Hart talks about how much he hates Goldberg. Well, maybe Bret Hart was a guy you don't go and sign, not because Bret Hart's a bad guy, but you're already got star power as it is. Why are you front loading so much?
Yeah.
That's a problem. I think the two people who stood out for me on this doc as a whole, I think Eric Bischoff, because I think Eric Bischoff was brutally honest
Yeah.
about a lot of things. And I think it took a lot of self reflection for Eric Bischoff to say some of the things he said. And the other guy was someone you mentioned. You mentioned Kevin Nash. Kevin Nash was brutally honest too, talking about behind the scenes stuff and how some of it went. And to be fair to I thought both of them did a really good job of talking through some things based on what happened behind the scenes. But again, if you haven't watched it, it was on Vice. All the episodes are up on YouTube. Type in Who Killed WCW. It was a fantastic series.
Yeah.
So, all right, Jeff, is there anything else you wanted to bring up before?
No. No.
All right. That'll do it for this edition of the FaceTurn podcast here on the Sports Insanity Network. Check us out. We're on Twitter at Insanity Real. We are also on Facebook. This podcast has its own Facebook page as well. So check that out as well. To the people who've been affected by the hurricane, I'm trying to remember the name of it, and I can't. And for the people who might be affected, thoughts are with you. Everyone stay safe. You can check out the website, www.thesportsinsanitynetwork.com. Great blogs, vlogs, planes, trains, and automobiles. But for Jeff Knapp, I'm Mike Rifkin. We'll talk to you all next time here on the FaceTurn podcast, here on the Sports Insanity Network. Have a good one, everybody.